Good morning, colleagues. Welcome to our SCM collaboration. Today we are going to be discussing the SCM instruction note, SCM instruction note number 9. This is talking to the publication of tenders on the government tender bulletin and tender e-portal. And also now there are new things that are emerging on this particular instruction note that we need to take cognizance of. I remember one experience I had when I was in municipalities. AG found that I did not publicize the awards and the transaction was actually deemed as irregular expenditure. So when I read this, it was quite something to actually, I found it quite interesting actually. So this is what we're going to be discussing today, and then colleagues, you are more than allowed at any given time if you want to raise a hand or you want to contribute on something. If maybe you realize that I'm not seeing your hands, I do allow you to interrupt me along the way as I continue. So welcome to everyone. So this instruction note is talking to all the accounting officers of departments, constitutional institution, accounting authorities, and Schedule 2 and 3 public entities. Every time when I see these instructions, I always ask myself, then what about the PFMA? I mean, the MFMA space, provincial, Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, they always delay income. So in terms of issuing the similar things for municipalities. So yeah, this is what the instruction note is about. The purpose is to prescribe the mandatory utilization of the eTender portal. As I did indicate that it is applicable to your Schedule 2 and 3 entities as well as government department. It's effective from the 1st of November. I think also I will request maybe colleagues in terms of their understanding pertaining to those tenders that will probably be running now, and what then will that be applicable to them or not. Now, the purpose of this instruction is to prescribe mandatory utilization of the eTender portal for open competitive bids, amendment to advertised bids, cancellation of bids, and notification of final awards by department, constitutional institutions, public entities, Schedule 2-3 of the PFMA. And this may include the change of bid closing date and change of bid condition and specification. So basically, anything that has to do with the change for a tender, it will have to be put on this portal. I know that I used to see, for example, erratums. We will issue erratums on newspapers, whereby if there's any change, be it a closing date or maybe a evaluation criteria. So I guess then this means that also that will go to the eTender portal. Now, what happened in the Treasury Regulation 6A prescribed that the accounting officer must ensure that bids are advertised for at least 21 days minimum, except in urgent cases where bids may be advertised for such shorter period as the accounting officer or the authority may deem appropriate. And this also prescribed that the accounting officer must ensure that the awards are publicized in government tender bulletin and other media by means which they were advertised. We'll also get to the other media in terms of what does that mean. Now, the instruction note 1 of 2014-15-16 prescribed the mandatory advertisement and publication of awards on eTender portal by departments with effect from the 1st of May. And this requirement was in addition to utilization of government tender bulletin. So now we had eTender portal, now we have government tender bulletin, and then there's also CIDB, eTender, I think it's iTender of CIDB, where also awards needs to also be loaded as well. So I think now we have 3 that we have to comply with. And then in February 2021, government principal work publicized suffered a technical difficulty in March, and the eTender portal also suffered a fatal crash. So the National Treasury then approved a departure from publication of bid adverts and awards on both the government tender bulletin and the e-portal. That was last year, 2021, which in February. And the National Treasury then initiated an overhaul of the entire e-portal to serve as a transparent platform, which caters for advertisement of bids and publication of awards. And with added functionality for submission and publication of procurement plans, list of bids received and contract register. You know, when I saw the list of bids received, I thought to myself, my goodness, I know that a lot of us have your tender registers, and usually tender register, it would be like a book that is filled with a pen. And now how clear or visible would that be when we have to load it on this portal? But hey, we are talking transparency now. I guess that would be also a requirement. The eTender portal is a mechanism that promotes transparency and open public procurement, which allows the relevant treasury as well as the public to monitor the procurement process and outcome of the institution. The publication of the procurement plans and the concluded contracts on the contract register will be dealt with in separate directive. Hence, the utilization of eTender portal of this publication will not be compulsory until such directive is issued by National Treasury. So now, National Treasury is now saying, yes, you have to publicize a procurement plan, but it's not compulsory. So we'll give a directive in terms of how to go about that. And again, it's then the decision of the organ of state, whether you want to start publicizing it now or you maybe wait for National Treasury to give a clear directive. Now, publishing bid information on eTender portal. Accounting officers must publish open competitive bids, including complete set of bid documents. Sure. Yeah, colleagues, yeah. Any amendments to advertised open competitive bid, cancellation of open competitive bid, and notification of open competitive bid awards on eTender portal. So now we are publicizing the advert, the bid document, as well as the cancellation, as well as awards, for at least 21 days, except in urgent cases where the bid may be advertised for such a shorter period as the accounting officer or the accounting authority may deem, or unless such period is provided by the SCM policy of the institution, is which Treasury 16A, A6, 3C, and D do not apply. Now, publication mentioned in 3.1 is not compulsory in case of procurement through price quotation and procurement through other means such as deviation from inviting competitive bids. So I guess if you'd have a deviation for 5 million, which usually falls under competitive bidding process, you don't need to actually publicize this. Institution may, at their own discretion, utilize the eTender portal to publish such procurement, including associated notification on the eTender portal. Institutions must capture the following information on the eTender portal: the bid information. I'm assuming bid information will be the bid number, the description, maybe the closing date, and then the closing time. Yeah, because now when they say bid information, I would think that now one will have to unpack in terms of what we then understand about what is bid information. Bidders list within 10 working days of opening the competitive bid closing dates. That is the tender register. Now that book that we register all those tenders. So after closing date, within 10 days, we need to load this. This, I think, at some point, I'm speaking under correction, in the MFMA space, there was a time when it was a requirement that we actually publicize those tender registers. Award information within 10 working days of the successful bidder accepting the bid award. Now, I'm thinking at the back of my mind again, when the appointment letter is issued and then confirmed receipt, or when the contract is signed, when then do we count that 10 days? Bid cancellation information and bid amendments at least 10 working days before the bid closes. Institutions may upload any clarification requests that have been received and responses provided on the eTender portal as a measure to ensure transparency in the bid process. May upload. So now, basically, when there's now, usually it happens when there's a briefing session. After a briefing session, people will still ask questions, and then any responses that are given there, that information can be loaded on the eTender portal. But now there's a may upload. So I guess it will only the discretion of the institution. The awarding of bid is complete when a successful bidder accepts the award. The period referred to in paragraph 33C commences from the date when the successful bidder accept the bid in writing. You know, I've seen a lot of service providers don't always confirm acceptance depending on what is it that we are awarding them for. Usually we would have service level agreement for services, but if now we are buying laptops, usually they will start talking about we'll deliver at this particular time. So I guess will then have to formalize that communication to service providers to say, please confirm receipt and acceptance of the contract so that we are able to start doing the counting and publicize this accordingly. If the tender portal is not available for a period exceeding more than 2 working days, the accounting officer must utilize any of the following media: their own institutional website or any other media which can be accessed nationally, printed media and or electronic media. My question when I saw this one, colleagues, again, I'm thinking to myself, newspapers are expensive. So we advertise this thing on Sunday Times, and now the eTender portal is not available. We then choose to advertise only on the website, not on the Sunday newspaper. Will that still be acceptable for AG, or what would the case be? So then we'll advertise in those to publish the advertisement, the bid award, any related notification until such time that the eTender portal has been restored. The downtime must be immediately communicated to National Treasury's SCM unit on the following email. So I think that one also will have to serve as proof that at that point in time when you needed to load information, there was downtime, therefore you had to use other means. Publication of bid information or other media, in addition to publishing bid information on tender portal. Accounting authorities may advertise the bid on media, including government tender bulletin, should they deem it necessary. Accounting officers must ensure that information published in any other media is consistent with the information published of eTender portal. Remember, the eTender portal talked about bid information and all of that. So I guess that whatever that we publish in will have to be in line with this instruction note that we put out there. Now, access to eTender portal. Accounting officers must designate an official who will be responsible for all of this exercise, both the open competitive bid, amendments, cancellation, everything that has to do with this particular information that is required on this instruction note. In order for official mentioned in 5.12 provide access to eTender portal, the official must complete a user application form accessible on the Office of the Chief Procurement website under the bias area, and the form must be approved by the accounting officer or his delegated authority. And then the completed approved user application form must be submitted to the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer in this email address indicated. Will it be accepted to invite suppliers direct from emails as addition to the website? I'm going to request one of the colleagues to respond to that before I give my opinion. Nolwazi is asking, guys, will it be acceptable to invite suppliers direct from email as addition to the website? Any take on this one, colleagues? Nolwazi, my view on this one, as you are indicating, is an addition to the website. So what you do is, personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I remember when I was in municipalities, you find that there'll be instances where we'll go out, especially on these 7-day adverts. You'll advertise and the next day you don't receive any responses. And then when you do it out there again, the second time around, you send to companies that you know, or companies that you worked with before on this very similar service. I don't know if there's any a colleague who maybe has a different view about that. Going and going. I don't see anyone, but colleagues, you're allowed to interrupt me if maybe you have a view about that. So now, here, departments and constitutional institutions and public entities on Schedule 2 and 3 who were using the previous eTender portal must also submit that form that is envisaged in paragraph 5.2. So I guess it's more about now starting this thing from scratch, where people have to apply. Now, this instruction note is repealing. It's not repealing the entire instruction note. It's only repealing certain paragraphs in different instruction notes. Paragraph 7.2 of Instruction Practice Notes 3 of 2004 on the monthly reporting questionnaire to be completed for each contract awarded. So that is being repelled. The Treasury Note Instruction Note 1 of 2015-16, advert of bids and publication of awards on the eTender portal is also being repelled. SCM Instruction Note 1 of 2021-2022, departure from publication of bids, awards, and related notification in government tender bulletin is also being repelled. This one, remember, This is where we were given permission to not publicize because there were challenges that were experienced by the government tender bulletin or government printing works. Now, confirmation of the state, oh, there's something that's hiding my, okay. Confirmation of the status of the approved government tender bulletin departure. On the 6th of May 2021, the acting CPO in terms of section 17 of the PFMA approved a departure from Instruction Note 1 of 2015-16 as it relates to mandatory requirement to publish bids, advertisement, awards, and notification by accounting officers. And therefore, in August 2022, the CPO approved the withdrawal of the departure in as far as it relates to mandatory requirement to publish advertisement, awards, and notification. It must be noted that the departure from application of Regulation 16AC3C and 16AC3D in as far as they apply to the publication of bid, advertisement, and award in the government tender bulletin, subject to institution complying with the minimum advertising period as prescribed in Section 6.3c will remain in effect. So this needs to be read again. So the source here is actually the confirmation of the status of the approved government tender bulletin departure. It was issued last year, or in, no, this one is now the 30th of October 2022. Now, the circular applies to all government departments, constitutional institutions, and public entities listed in 3A and 3C of the PFMA. Now, discussion points. As I did indicate, there's not really much change in terms of advertising of the bids. Information is not specified. What is new in this is that bidders must list, bidders list, I call it a tender register, but it's bidders list. Bidders list within 10 working days of the open comparative closing date. Previously, it was just on institutions' website. So now what is required is that after you close that tender, and as I'm saying that, I know that those books, the tender register books, are those kind of books now. I don't know, maybe one would have to create new ones or something that can be such that you'll be able to make a copy and scan and be able to load it on this because it's required. It says publication of name of bidders in respect of advertised comparative bids above the threshold of 500,000. Within 10, this was instruction note, instruction 32 of 2011, was saying, within 10 working days after the closure of any advertised comparative bid, the institution must publicize on its website the names of all bidders that submitted bids in relation to the particular advertisement. Where practical, institutions must also publish the total price and the preferences claimed by the respective bidders, and the information should remain on the website within 30 days. Now, this one was very tricky because now you are talking about within 10 working days and also talking about the preference claimed by the respective bidders. So you can imagine for departments like Department of Education that receive like 4,000 bids, how long will it take for them to actually write down these bids, after that determining the preference and then load on the website. But anyway, this is now the change that came. This is what we need to do within the 10 working days. So what is here at the bottom is on the previous instruction note. And also what is required is that we need to provide the award information within 10 working days of the successful bidder accepting the bid award. For bids relating to construction, prescript of the CIDB requires that bids be advertised on the CIDB eTender, bids be registered on the register of projects on award, and progressively updated until the project completion for the promotion, assessment, and evaluation of best practice. Now, this is PFMA Instruction Note 32 of 2011. Now talks to CIDB, as I did indicate. Now we have an additional requirement of this loading of ours. Lindy, welcome.
Hi, Tandi. I just wanted to say that paragraph 3.3, the one that you have read about bidders list, the previous instruction note was very clear and explicit in terms of the information that we need to provide about the bidders list, the price, preference, and all that. But this one is just saying bidders list. It's not clear. So I think it also goes back to the institution applying its own discretion, because the example that you have provided of Department of Education surely it's not practical. Sometimes also with the capacity constraints that we have, to capture all the relevant information. So because it's ambiguous, what is it that they refer to when they say bidders list? Do they only mean the name of the companies that have responded on time? Or we must also go back and include their prices and their preference points? It's not clear. The same with number A, where you say bid information. What are they referring to when they say bid information? Do they mean the description of the bid or what? Because bid information, if we have to unpack it, it can mean a whole lot of things. So I think for me, this instruction note is still, although they're creating additional work for us, but it's still very ambiguous in my view. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindy. I agree with you. And this is a thing where we find ourselves now having AG becoming law, because we might decide that bid information would be a name of the company, maybe price was practical, or just the name of the company. And then some guy from AG will come and say, no, bid information is actually the description, the closing time, the closing date, the opening. So it becomes very problematic if it's this ambiguous. But I think then shouldn't then be, isn't this meant to be left to the institution to make it a policy matter, perhaps? To say, can we put in our policy to say, okay, what we understand as bid information for the purpose of the tender register, what is bid information for the purpose of the award, then we will prescribe. Because for the bid register, as I did say, I mean, one time I was working in one department, we had 800 bids that we received. It took us 3 days to actually register them. Now, imagine now when you talk about 4,000, that 10 days is going to be gone. And what are you capturing there? So, yeah, that's much like.
Thank you, Metandi. I just want to support what Menkwe has alluded to. I think when things are left like this, it creates a problem for us as supply chain practitioners, because as you indicated, AG will come and try to raise a finding because you didn't insert a particular information. So for all intents and purposes, my suggestion would be that perhaps once again, we might want to sort of write to Treasury to just issue guidelines in terms of the minimum information that needs to be inserted there, and that should also be sort of ventilated or discussed with the AG, so that the AG says this is the minimum information that is required. However, in terms of the policy of each and every organization or department, then whatever additional information will still be acceptable in line with each and every department's policy. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. I support what you say, Malakia, because really, as the issue, one thing I remember when the triple PFA regulation constitutionality matter was still going on, there was one session that I attended that National Treasury was there making a presentation about it, and I asked them that as they were doing this thing, where was AG? Have they been in consultation with AG? And they actually said no, actually they were thinking about it. And this is where I realized that National Treasury does not realize that the things that they are doing, they are creating problems for us, which they're not even going to help us to solve. Because now it's very clear that if you don't comply with certain condition of instruction note, you have an irregular expenditure in your hands. Leonora, your hand is up.
Yes, good morning all to you all.
Good
with
morning.
regards to accepting of awards, it is said that we must publicize the winning bidders 10 days after the accepting of bidders. But now, what if you are dealing with multiple awards, e.g., we have awarded 100 bidders and they did not accept the award same time? Maybe the last one accepts the award 10 or 20 days after the award. Are we not going to be found non-compliant by AG?
Interesting. Colleagues, any take on that one? Arno is also asking, is there any indication from National Treasury that this will be published for municipal space also, any time frame? If so, I actually asked about the same thing I know when we started, that every time when I see this thing, I always ask myself about the PFMA, MFMA. But with MFMA, obviously, they will put a circular also to that effect. So in absence of that, it won't be. So colleagues, Leonard, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Leonard asked the question, what happened in an instance where now many bidders respond at the different times? My view is that I would work with the last one that has responded. But here's the thing, if you're working with so many bidders, guys, certain service providers sometimes have this tendency of not confirming their acceptance and they start delivering. I don't know how then one will deal with that, you know. And Advocate Nzadu was talking about the issue of the POPIA Act in terms of the compliance. Where is POPIA compliance in all this practice note? This is very interesting. As you put information there, which one would you deem to say it's privileged information that should not be in the public domain? Sure, colleagues, there are a lot of things that now I think one would have to ask questions from National Treasury. Advocate, your hand is up. Advocate Zaluba?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Shalom to all. Don't want to say good morning. There might be someone who is evening in the group. I just want to say one of the things I find interesting is that it seems like Treasury forgets that there is legislation that says, besides the fact that you are dealing with companies, those companies are legal, are data subjects, and they've got right in terms of how their information must be utilized. And it does not seem to be coming out anyway. And can we take charge of this before the data subjects take charge of us? It will be a sad day when the information regulator harps now and harms on Treasury. And I've been observing this in several of their communication. Yeah, days Mandulo, there was no GDPR. There's GDPR now. And we need to be careful on how we deal with data subjects information, be it individuals, be it also companies, because companies in terms of POPIA, unlike GDPR, are legal entities whose information must be protected, whose information must be classified, which one is personal, which one is public, and how do you manage it, how do you process it, which is a deeper side of the stick that I've not heard any discussion about. How do we ensure lawful processing, the 8 principles, in whatever I want to do in the procurement space when it is with regards to these data subjects?
Thank you, Advocate. You know what you're saying now, it actually now renders my view useless when I was saying maybe this should be a policy matter, because then if it becomes a policy matter, we might also still make a policy matter on things that might be legal. Then I would go back to what Dr. Mashulani was saying, that I think one would have to go back to National Treasury for them to be that descriptive, to be outright and say what information needs to be captured, taking cognizance of what you are raising on the POPIA Act. Omoto is saying that I just wish we could move towards integration with the MFMA space and institutions of higher learning, so that one doesn't have to read instructions and circulars relating to different spheres of government. I totally agree with you, Omoto. Who is unmuted?
Maybe just to add, it is not about us thinking about as officials what must be there. The 8 principles says you must consult with data subjects. You must consult. So it's not about what you think. You need to make sure that you consult with them. We need to move with the laws, because you're going to deal with companies like within the IT space. You're going to deal with companies that are, and a lot of them, that are within the GDPR, and will be found with our, let me leave it there.
Advocate, what is GDPR?
GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. It is the mother to Now, the general regulation applies to any entity. For example, if you go to the ICT space, let's take SITA and the entities that they are using. where is their home? The home is not South Africa. Most of them you find they are in the EU. And others are in America. They are governed by GDPR. And then you want to actually deal with them. And you forget that there's GDPR, you forget that there's POPIA. Definitely. That's a challenging state that we want to put ourselves in, as well as our government.
Okay, thank you. I've learned GDPR. I'll be GDPRing people now from now onwards with confidence. I'm kidding. So yeah, I actually spoke about CIDB, that now we have government tender bulletin, we have government e-portal, now we have CIDB website. These are the institutions that we need. I mean, they're the portals that we need to load tender awards. And I think going back to what Khomotso is saying about the MFMA and all this thing, I think even with these systems, if we're able to have central supply database for all government institutions, why can't we just have one portal where all of this information can be loaded and then we can move on? I'm not sure the hands, if they're recent or they're old. Malakia and Advocate, are your hands old or new hands? Okay.
Apologies, it was an old.
Sorry, my apologies. It's an old hand.
No problem. So we have work now that is added to us where we need to employ someone. Bid cancellation information. Again, I guess it goes back to what information are we going to be putting there? Are we supposed to put the reasons for cancellation? Or are we supposed to say, hey, bid number 3 is cancelled and just move on? You know, I don't know. Bid amendments, at least 10 working days before the bid closes. So basically this now, it says you can't make any bid amendments post 10 working days before closing date. I don't know if you guys get me. So you have whatever period that you have advertised up until just before 10 working days before the bid closes that you can make amendments and publicize it. If it goes beyond that, then you might have a problem. So I think this bid cancellation information also is something, and it's another thing that will also, I think, yes, we are talking transparency, which is all good, but also we are opening another can of worms, because now certain organs of states, our reason for cancelling bids, guys, are not so, you know, yeah, certain reasons that we have for cancelling bids are just not justified. So I'm wondering, even when they say that we have to put information on bid cancellation, what is it that we are putting? Are we putting a tender number and description and say cancelled, or are we putting a reason for cancellation? And if we put a reason for cancellation, what risk are we getting exposed to, be it litigations or questions? Because the other thing, colleagues, about this information, when you put it out there, there's going to be questions coming. Do we have the capacity to deal with the volume of questions that are going to be coming based on this information that we are putting out there? I am for transparency, but I also am of the view that whatever we put out there, make sure that you are ready for its implementation or anything that will come out of that. And yeah, that brings me to the end of our presentation for today. I don't know if there's anything else that our colleagues would also like to add on, or maybe to comment or advise on pertaining to this instruction note. I see Malakia and then Advocate afterwards. Malakia?
Sorry, I'm muted. I was saying thanks
Okay.
for the presentation, and it's enlightening. What I would like to propose, so that we don't become just a talk show, we sort of put action plans, you know. So what's next? What are we going to do so that we can get the attention of Treasury? Because my understanding is that we are here to make sure that there are no perils or impediments in the implementation of this instruction notes, you know, and also to assist the general SCM community.
Yeah, I agree. I remember there was a time when Sean, I think it was on the instruction note that you presented on the GTI one, where he actually requested some, I think, extension for submission of comments, if not some clarity. So I think for this one, Esther, maybe the same should be done, because really now that I've actually went through this instruction note, it's quite vague. and it's effective from the 1st of November, meaning that your PFMA institutions who are going to be audited as at the end of this financial year will be audited on it, and there needs to be clarity before this becomes actually effective. Advocate, you raise your hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to propose on top of what the colleague has said. I think the approach that was adopted in the previous engagement, where Sean was able to just succinctly write to the commission around the issues of reservations, and hence then a need just to have, whether big or small, no, I won't say consultation, presentation. I think we need to encourage Treasury to talk to these things than writing on them as instructions, you know, because the last time I checked, we were consulting before we put practice notes, because you don't want to be violating any law, and you want to be advised also on other laws that you might be violating. And this goes across all the practice notes that we are dealing with, especially practice notes that deals with a publication of somebody's information. As a player in the space, I would warn against us thinking that we have a right to people's information. We don't, and we must accept that. In as much as they need some job from us, but they've got their right and dignity and privacy. And we need to make sure that that dimension is factored into our procurement processes. And I'm still to see it. And the best place to deal with that is the place where all these tables are coming from. And lastly, I want to say, in doing that, it would help for them to actually solicit also advice from the information regulator, so that they are always on the better side of the law regarding all these things. So that is my last, and my comment is generic. Information regulator is there to advise on anything that you want to publicize, whether it's on your website or wherever regarding a data subject. That information is not yours, it belongs somewhere. And before we get into trouble, let's become friends of the information regulator. Because when they come, now, they hit you hard that you violated the lawful processing requirements. It's not going to be beautiful. And we must try and save taxpayers' money at all costs. Thanks.
Thank you, Advocate. Lindy, where your hand was up.
Yes, Thandi, thank you. I just wanted to check, especially with the advocate, what will happen if we have published the notification of award and that award is challenged at the court of law? Are we then expected to retract that notification or what? Thank you.
Lindy, yes, thanks. Lindy, that is why I'm just saying we need to be friends with the information regulator, because if the court has made a determination, you don't have an option. Rather than ending up with unpalatable situations, let's fall in love with the information regulator and just make sure that we get advised on these things. Yeah, we get advised. And remember the like you're saying, the challenge in terms of PAJA can come in terms of PAJA says and the players, the people who participated in a bid can challenge it. And so that I think what you're raising is that how do we ensure that we don't end up placing our data linen in public? How do we ensure that our processes are sacrosanct? Whatever is out there in the public has gone through all due diligence. Unfortunately, Linda, sometimes that's not going to be possible because people have their own rights to challenge. But what is important that let's just make sure that they don't challenge a basic thing that this information that is there is not supposed to be there. And of course, if then is challenged and you have to retract, you will use the administrative processes, administrative law of retracting. You will have to, because you will have been instructed by the court to do it. But what you raise becomes critical in terms of the consultations that I'm pleading for with Treasury, that may they find it pleasing in their sight that they come and present this before they make it law. Because a practice notice is not a law. So at some point you are going to make us tell you that this is not a law, it will never be law. So they must come and present this. We look at all the permutations, all the downs and ups, so that we don't compromise the integrity of the systems that we think we are improving on. We had e-procure in some environment in my life. Then there was no POPIA, you could do as you please. Now there are various things that are happening, so we must just be alive to those. And like what Lindway is saying, we then need to have a footnote in exactly that publication, in exactly that thing that is in the public, in exactly that system, that subject to any legal process, whatever is in the system might be altered upon advancing of a legally of a document that is legally, should I say legally right, or a document that holds the dignity and authority of the legality space. You cannot just throw it there. You need to look into what Lindway is saying and see how then you factor it on, so that then you don't get challenged. So you will have to have your footnotes and your caveats in all that, in those tables that you have. I hope, Lindway, have answered you.
Thanks, Advocate.
Ron?
Hello, Thandi. Thanks for a superb presentation. And I fully support the general movement of colleagues that we need to look at the legality of the sharing of information. I want to suggest we maybe get an expert in, maybe invite the regulator or a POPIA expert or somebody who's an expert on data, just to look at what we may be allowed to share. And of course, then it also gives us clarity in terms of what information we can share in terms of this very vague clause, because now suddenly we're exposed. So we need to know the limits to what we can put in. So we need to know, firstly, are we permitted to share the information? And secondly, if we are, what are the boundaries in terms of that, and maybe processes that we need to follow to do it. The second point, and I just want to preface my second point with the fact that we as an organization will do our best to comply in full. Having said that, I'm not sure on the status of the legality of this particular instruction note. People keep worrying about the AG, but I've never seen the AG take on National Treasury. And if they're independent, they should be. Now, if I look at this instruction note, and I've just glanced at it briefly during your wonderful talk, the instruction note is issued in terms of the PFMA, and it quotes in particular section 76.4c. It also quotes 4G, but I'm just going to focus on section 76.4c. 76.4c is not relevant for this particular instruction note. 76.4c refers to a framework. And I think the law is reasonably clear that a framework is different from a procedure. And in this instruction note, this is a very detailed procedure. It's not a framework. So National Treasury, I think, have misquoted 74C, and they've done it in the past as well. They can possibly get away with G, but I'm not an expert and I don't want to go there. The second point, it may seem petty, but it just irks me, is that the signing of this particular instruction note, it's not signed. Now, there's somebody's have a signature of a witness. Now, my limited knowledge of electronic communications and of signing of documents is that if a document is not signed, or if you've got a document that's signed by a witness but not signed by the main person, it's not a legal document. I could be wrong, I probably am wrong, but I can't see how they can distribute this without it being signed. And it's signed by an acting CFO. I'm not sure what's happening with the CFO, why the CFO has not signed it. The other thing which irks me is we're wanting clarification on certain things. And the instruction note does not permit us to go to National Treasury or the OCPO for clarification. No, we have to go to ICT at National Treasury. Now, are the ICT the experts on basic questions that we have? I don't know that there are knowledge experts. That's a different discipline. But, you know, we're instructed to, if we have any queries, to send an email to the ICT. It's not even a person or a position mentioned, it's just some general ICT email. That to me is disrespectful of us. Normally you would get hold of the head of the section, the OCPO, in the absence of, say, the compliance person. So I just want to reiterate what somebody said during the session, and which has been said through a number of sessions in terms of our next steps and our activist role. If we want to win the respect of National Treasury, unfortunately, we have to take them on. We've tried to do it amicably, it hasn't worked. And in order to take them on, we have to get all our facts in order, and that is where the recommendation is to get an expert in on POPIA. And once we've got all the details, then we can formally write to maybe whoever we wish to, but you know, we're supposed to write to ICT and deal with it like that. But I'm getting tired of this lack of consultation, this amateurism by National Treasury, the use of the wrong sections of the PFMA, the overreach at times. And just not considering us in terms of the cost implications and all the rest of it. Thank you for this opportunity. Bye.
Thanks, Ron. I think just a moment, Figile, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I've just quickly been to National Treasury's website. It actually has been signed now the one that's on the website is signed on the 13th of October by Willie Matebula. And I scanned through it. There's not really, it is the one that we presented today. So now it has been signed, it has some legitimacy. Figile? Figile? Okay, maybe Figile has a problem with her sound. I see Owen is requesting that Sean, you assist with sharing the recording. Owen, there's a YouTube platform that you can be able to get these recordings on the YouTube channel. But usually, if you're on the Telegram group, you will also get the recording from the group. So yeah, Figile. Hi, Figile.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm saying one is trying to juggle between different roles and responsibilities, but I have been trying to follow on the discussions. One of the key things that one would like to raise is the issue of the unintended consequences of the instruction, especially to the winning bidders. Like I raised in the previous meeting, that when we were expecting that the PPR 2017 is going to bolster manufacturing in the country, but it has not done so, because once a supplier is awarded a bid and it has advertised, the employees then want unreasonable demands from the employer. They want an increase there and then. So these are the key things that we also need to take into account, because these instructions come through, but we never consider what are the risks and what are the unintended consequences that we have to deal with at a later stage. Thank you. That is my input.
This is very interesting. I never actually thought about it. You're right. It's true. But the issue of the tender awards and the prices has been there for quite a while. But as you are saying, I think it's something that one would maybe think about. Also, just to check back on what Lindy and Tanzania were talking about, advocates and we were talking about, in the MFMA space, there's I wouldn't call it a requirement, but there's that in the MFMA whereby bidders are given 14 days to contest or maybe to raise any issues that they're not happy with about the award. So what a certain municipality will do, they will wait for that 14 days before they can do anything to see if there's any litigations coming before the service provider can actually now start implementing this thing. And that is 14 days. Now I'm thinking to myself that if now you have to advertise within 10 days, and now there's that period for bidders to litigate, what then do you do? Do you then withdraw on the portal, or do you write on the portal that, sorry, Tandy is no longer bought anymore, there's litigation? You know, I don't know in terms of now how we're going to deal with that. As Lunile is asking, is it now optional to advertise on at least one newspaper? Remember on the instruction note, I think on the newspaper it's a or, if I'm not mistaken, but just go back to it, because one thing I know for sure is that government tender bulletin, the portal and all of that are a requirement, but with newspapers, it's an option. And I've seen a lot of municipalities, what they do to save cost, they used to do it because the requirement in the MFMA through the supply chain regulation, they will just advertise on local newspapers. They work out very cheap. So, and MFMA will say minimum newspapers circulating locally, and then nationally it's an option. So I think with newspapers now it becomes an option, but these portals are a requirement. Colleagues, I don't know if there's anything else. I think what has been resolved on here is that maybe we should communicate back to National Treasury and seek clarity on the matters that have been raised pertaining to what information, be more clearer on what information is supposed to be loaded, number one. Number two, take note of the POPIA Act. And three, the issue around those that get to be litigated. What then about those? So I don't know if there's anything else maybe that I have not captured correctly. If I have not, please correct me, colleagues. Other than that, I think from my part, we are done. Is there anything I'm going to give the colleagues an opportunity again? Maybe if there's anything that they want to ask, comment, or say?
Yes.
Okay, Ron, and I see this.
Sorry, just to confirm, I thought we had agreed we would invite
Ron, continue.
Were we going to invite an expert to speak to us on POPIA and data and all the rest of it? You know, we need that information before we can, you know, get hold of National Treasury. And we also need it in order to do our jobs. We have a legal obligation to protect information and handle it responsibly. So for me, in terms of, you know, your summation, you know, we must have, you know, right in the beginning, a session devoted to the implications of POPIA in relation to SEM with particular application to this publication. Thanks.